Thanks, Brayton. As he said, my name is Benjamin Smith. I am a second-year doctoral student here in voice at the Jacobs School of Music. I'm a pretty good example of what I'm going to be talking about today about somebody who is doing way too many things and needs to figure out what road to go down. I'm the executive director of New Voices Opera, the president of the SNATS chapter here at IU. I music direct at Bloomington Playwrights Project, and I'm a graduate assistant for the admissions office. So I've got all kinds of administrative experience and directing experience, and I try to sing sometimes in there occasionally. So today we're going to talk about how the landscape for musicians is really changing coming out of school. Now, the performers, for the most part, is going to feel like what I'm talking about for most of the presentation today. But in reality, I'm talking about educators, administrators, entrepreneurs, and performers. So the singers are becoming their own agents. The agents' jobs, the agents being the talent agents, talent scouts, their jobs, there's fewer and fewer of them, and there's fewer and fewer people wanting to do that, which means that if you want to go have somebody manage your career for you as a performer, it's getting harder and harder to find those people, and those spots are fewer and far between. Your portfolio now is not what it used to be. It's not, a resume with a headshot on the other side. It's all online for the most part. They ask for links to your recordings. You're really expected to have a website for the most part, so that you have links to your audio and video recordings, so that you have all kinds of headshots and performance shots so you can make yourself look as good as possible. And really that's on you. You can hire someone to do that work for the website for you, but that's kind of your own prerogative there. Your contracts are getting shorter. You're not seeing 2- and 3-year-long residencies and young artist programs as much anymore. You'll maybe be hired for one show, if you're lucky, a season. That'll take you a year. But for the most part, people are jumping from job to job. Speaking mainly in the US, there's a little bit different culture, and especially Germany. You can find some longer contracts, especially at the fest houses. And then the old guard of the faculty that are at the universities are going to start seeing those positions change. If things don't change in the culture of the universities as they are right now, we're going to see fewer and fewer alumni graduating with successful careers, which means less and less money coming back into the university to pay for those tenure track positions. And so that kind of old guard of tenure track, I've done it, I performed, I've been there, and I'm going to settle down now and teach is really a career path that might be disappearing if things don't change a little bit. So what we're also needing to try to figure out for our students is, what is the purpose of our music degree right now? Is it to be able to go out and perform? Is it to be able to administrate? Is it to be able to kind of hodgepodge all this together into a portfolio career that I'll talk about later, into something that works for each individual? And schools have a responsibility to students to avoid this 20-something crossroads of, I don't know where I'm going. I've graduated with a degree, but I don't have enough experience to land this job, and this job requires a terminal degree, so I'm just kind of in limbo land. Do I just go back to school? How can I make money? Do I just keep taking loans out? And so there's really 4 possible outcomes at the end of the day. The first is your career and your education align. You're a performance major, you graduate, you're one of those lucky few who is able to have a performance career. Your career is misaligned, but you felt like your education was crucial to your success. You're in kind of a peripheral career path. Maybe you're an agent, maybe you're in administration, and your music education was crucial to getting you that job. Your career doesn't involve music, but you felt like that your education was important to your personal growth and happiness. So you felt like on a personal level, this is something that you really needed to do for yourself, and you're happy that you did it, but maybe you're in a completely different field at this point. And the final thing is that your career is not involving music, and your education you don't feel like really had any value as to what you're doing right now or your personal growth. So I would ask you, which of these 3, or which of these 4, yes, 4, how many of these do you think are successful outcomes for a music school? 3? Which 3? The first 3? I would agree with that. I think we really need to try and avoid feeling like education had little to no value, but I think we also need to get out of the mindset a lot of times of that our career and education aren't completely aligned, but there was a lot of value in what we learned in school and the experiences that we had, and we wouldn't trade that for anything. That's a successful education as well. So for institutions, they're looking forward to the future, and they're trying to understand where they want to be. And this has a lot to do with money, honestly. But they want to increase enrollment with more successful recruiting efforts. Their goals to build a healthy donor base and a healthy endowment funding, strong community engagement, and then they want to make sure that their students have meaningful and permanent place for themselves in whatever field that they choose or that they're being trained for. So how are we going to make this happen? Music entrepreneurship training. This is the key, in my opinion, to making sure that we can move forward in this changing landscape and make careers and paths for students that are going to create successful outcomes for them at the end of their training. So where are we right now? What are we doing well? What are we maybe not doing so well? So right now the instruction is pretty self-referential. We were talking about that old guard faculty. A lot of times the faculty are talking about their own careers. They're talking about coming from an era where you could get a chorus job or have, if we're all singers in the room for the most part, so if we're talking about being able to go and stay in a city and have constant contracts and gigs at this one opera house, and that just doesn't happen anymore. For the symphony performers, their contracts aren't as long. It's a lot harder, a lot more competitive to land a symphony gig. Those symphonies are disappearing. The permanent symphonies are really leaving. Those A houses are a lot smaller. There's a lot fewer of them. We're still following the old model. Oh, I just said this, of the permanent symphony. And then many institutions are lacking any career development or entrepreneurial mindset. And a lot of times you find that in the conservatory. And you also find it a lot in the schools that are designed like IU, where you have a music department. And then you have a disjunct in communication between this and what's going on in other, like for example at IU, the Kelley School of Business, where they have a fantastic entrepreneurship program. How do you get those two communities to talk to each other? And a lot of times we have art for art's sake. There's not really a connection to the audience or the community itself. And this is where art can kind of get stuck in academia. It's just in a constant circle where we're producing art for ourselves. But at the end of the day, if we want to get paid, we've got to do this in front of someone. There's got to be an audience that wants to fill the seats, to pay for the tickets, and we need to understand how that dynamic works in the market. And a lot of universities just kind of use what I call their backup plan, which is adopting a new venture creation curriculum from a business program, maybe at their school or another one that they've looked at. And this is entrepreneurship training, but it's geared toward for-profit research. So you're talking about starting a new bakery or a jewelry shop or a clothing store. And it's not really geared toward the challenges that musicians are going to face. They're going to learn a lot. They'll learn a lot about accounting. They're going to learn a lot about marketing, but it's not going to be in the climate and the atmosphere of the nonprofit. And for the most part, 100% of the training is going into 5% of the job. That 5% of the job, really 5% of your career is going to be on the stage, unless you're really, really lucky. And 100% of the training in a lot of places is all on that 5%, when there's a whole lot more skills that you're going to need to develop in your career to be successful and not have to rely or pay people to do things all the time. If you can do them yourselves, you're going to save a lot more money. You're going to move a lot faster into the career that you want. Richard E. Caves says, the number of students graduated each year from qualified programs of specialized study greatly exceeds the number who can become income-earning professionals. Many of them eventually settle for some way other than their artistic calling to keep bread on the table. And this is really talking about how supply is outstripping demand completely. It's simple economics. There are way too many people in the field right now looking for jobs that are already filled. And so how are we gonna route that? So where are the jobs that I keep talking about, these mysterious jobs? So core industries, we're talking about performance, publishing, recording distribution, networks, instrument manufacturing, and retail industries. And then the peripheral industries and the portfolio career. Really, this research is 2011, and so really what has taken shape more and more is that portfolio career, being an administrator and being a music director and performing on the side and teaching lessons on the side and doing all of these things to create a living for yourself. But you're wearing a lot of hats and you don't really have one definition of what your job is. So it's music educators, agents, promoters, or working in performance venues as administrators. In 2011, the core industries employed 295,000 people, where in the peripheral industries, there was 899,000 people. This is important when you look at how much money there was in revenue in 2011. 3.1 billion in the core industries and 23.5 billion in the peripheral industries. And when you take that per capita, it's $10,508 per individual in the core industries versus $26,144 for those people that are not in the traditional careers. So, of course, you also got to think about kind of the 1% effect of the fact that a lot of people are going to have a lot of the money at the top and it's going to trickle down at the bottom. And that's more true for the core industries than it is for the peripheral industries. So what is entrepreneurship? What is your definition of entrepreneurship? Anybody have a definition for me? It's a really hard word to define because I'm going to spend about 10 minutes defining it right now. So, any guesses? No? Okay, I can tell you, that's fine. How would you define what it means to be entrepreneurial? Is that an easier way to phrase it? The bottom question there? You're good.
I feel like I've been told this is wrong before, but I usually think of doing something that doesn't make money yet to make money. Doing something different.
Yeah. Yes.
But I've been told it doesn't have anything to do with money, but that's my...
Well, in a lot of senses, there's a lot of work that goes into it before you start making money.
Right.
Yeah. So I hear innovation coming out of that, thinking outside the box. So in the historical context, now for all of this that I'm going to be talking about for the next couple of minutes, we're talking about the for-profit realm, and then we're going to translate that into what it could mean for the music professional. So most of the studies are not in music entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship was a term that came about in the late 19th century, and it was coined either by Jean-Baptiste Say or Richard Cantillon. And the other languages that have something similar in their language, Finnish, yrittäjä, someone who tries. Swedish, they actually use the word entrepreneur. Something of a builder or a creator, also an undertaker, not like execution undertaker, but someone who undertakes a task. That was undertaker, if you didn't catch that. So, and then Swedish, they also have another term, företagssam, to be a doer, to get things done. And I love these definitions, and they really show an inherent action in the term that's missing in the English definition. So dictionary.com defines it as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk, or an employer of productive labor, a contractor. That's not, in my opinion, what Jean-Baptiste Say had in mind when he coined this term. I think that the older languages are a little bit closer. The European languages are a little bit closer. They have that inherent action of you're the one creating something, you're the one doing something. So let's build our definition from the bottom up. Cantillon says, the person who bears the risk of buying at certain prices and selling when prices are uncertain. So we're like totally back to basics. It's just basic economics and marketing, okay? And market research, not marketing, market research. Joseph Schumpeter, innovation in 5 forms. Now his 5 forms are a new good or service, a new method of production, the opening of a new market, either by entering a new market or creating a completely new style of market, a new source of raw materials, or the development of a new organization. That last one is key to music entrepreneurship. But then Israel Kurzner says the entrepreneur acts with alertness to market fluctuations, or in other words, the entrepreneur possesses knowledge, a market advantage, which others do not. And this would seem to put Kurzner in direct opposition with Schumpeter. They seem like they're talking about 2 completely different things. But really, if you look at it as a whole definition, they're 2 sides of the same coin. And Aaron Karsrud, he has a book called Entrepreneurship that we're going to talk about a couple times today. He puts it best when he says, Schumpeter's entrepreneur sees opportunities through innovation, whereas Kurzner's entrepreneur sees opportunities because he or she possesses unique information or knowledge. Kurzner's entrepreneur seeks to capitalize on market ignorance, whereas Schumpeter's entrepreneur makes new markets. So it's that difference kind of back up at the top with those innovation in 5 forms where we're talking about developing a new market completely or acting on something that someone hasn't seen within an existing market. And both of these are entrepreneurial endeavors. And then Alan Karsrud himself says the process by which individuals, either on their own or inside organizations, pursue opportunities without regard to the resources they currently control. So they're not paying, I love that definition, yeah. So they're not paying any attention to what they currently have in their hands. They're looking at what they might have, right? And that definition in itself holds a lot of inherent risk. Peter Drucker, this is the most modern theory, and you'll see most pedagogues in the business schools quoting him and his texts. Entrepreneurship rests on the theory of economy and society. The entrepreneur always searches for change, responds to it, and exploits it as an opportunity. So this is really an emphasis on innovation as a vehicle for translating into entrepreneurial action, okay? So what does this mean for the music entrepreneur? So this is something that I just synthesized myself. Oh, I forgot that was on there. Music entrepreneurship is the process by which an individual approaches his or her career armed with an attitude of innovation and creativity to envision opportunities and objectives that impact his or her life, art, and communities in a fruitful and meaningful way. So you can take any synthesis of what we've talked about and make your own definition for music entrepreneur. You could start here, whatever you'd like to do. But this is where I thought of my jumping off point when I was thinking about my own career. So what does an entrepreneur look like? So the bottom question is the important one. What demeanor, attitude, or character traits does an entrepreneur need to possess to be successful today? What are your opinions on that? You gotta have opinions. Yeah.
Collaboration skills.
Collaboration, people skills. Yeah, very good. Ruben?
You have part of the community you're trying to reach. So you have to be listening to music, paying attention to what's going on in the culture around you.
Yeah, have a finger on the pulse of where you are, where you're living. Yeah. Yeah. Resilience. Resilience. Thick skin. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, a sense of organization and diligence.
Yeah, self-discipline, time management. Yeah, exactly. Great. Great, great, great. So, first of all, leadership. Even if you're just by yourself, you're leading yourself. But as your endeavor grows, hopefully you're going to bring some team members on to help you. And if you're the one that's leading the charge and coming up with the idea, then leadership is really going to be the key, your first step. So, there's a distinction between managers and leaders, and this comes from Donald Karatko. He's a distinguished professor at the Kelley School of Business here at IU. And he has 3 different types of leaders. Strategic is a blend of visionary and managerial, and I'll give you the definitions of visionary and managerial. Visionary leaders are more ambitious. They change the way others think and are concerned with the future and act more impulsively with nonlinear thinking. So they're a little bit more impulsive. They're kind of jetting this way and that. Managerial leaders are quite the opposite. They are reactive. They're structured. They're concerned with day-to-day activities, and they're more likely to make decisions using linear thinking and not impulse or personal value. And then you've got your strategic leaders, which he gets right close to saying, but doesn't actually say is the most successful entrepreneur, someone who can have their feet in both pools for that. Karsrud and Brenbach also have their own definitions of entrepreneurs, and really they're talking about different styles of leaders. So the achievement entrepreneur, the achiever has lots of energy. They're going to take on many tasks at once, and they're generally going to have a lot of success in a lot of different areas. The salesman uses his people skills, usually selling the idea to donors or in development in the nonprofit world is how I'd adapt that to the music entrepreneur. The techie, the technology entrepreneur, that's going to be someone who thinks analytically and calculates risk. And you see a lot of these, of course, in app development and things like that. And finally, the manager likes to take charge, but they're usually they don't work so well with others at the beginning. They usually like to step in and take charge of an idea that's already in motion. They're going to step in and manage it and take it to the next level. But they're usually going to wait until someone has got the groundwork laid out first. So qualities of an entrepreneur. We touched on a lot of these. Karsrud gives 8 entrepreneurial personality traits. So cooperativeness, we talked about collaboration, strong team player, strong desire to work hard, strong desire to learn new and different things, ability to listen to others and network. They're not competitive, but they're visionary and goal setting. They have a strong self-efficacy. They act a lot of times as a coach or a trainer. And they're really not any more risk prone than other professionals. And my question for you is, do these look familiar to you, these traits? Where do you see these in individuals in your life? Or maybe in yourselves? As musicians? Yeah? Right? Okay. There's really, competitive, maybe there's one that we can let go. But in reality, when you look at these characteristics, there's a strong overlap with what you're going to see in an entrepreneur and what you're going to see in an accomplished musician. Ensemble playing encourages team building and cooperation. Musicians, obviously, they're going to work hard. They're very dedicated. They have a desire to learn new techniques, master their craft. And while they are a bit competitive, they're taught to trust themselves And many of us are pedagogues in our own right, either to make extra money or it's just a natural progression of the career to eventually turn around and teach others the craft that we've learned. So Alan Karsrud, this is in a book called Entrepreneurship. Recent research has found differences in the cognitive style of entrepreneurs. We challenge the widespread perception or even myth that entrepreneurs are extreme risk takers and that they are born rather than made through learning or experience. In other words, we claim that some skills can be taught and some characteristics are attitudes that can be influenced through education, but some that are not teachable in the same way are clearly closer to art. This is a book called Entrepreneurship, not music entrepreneurship, not a musician's guide to making some money eventually. This is a book on for-profit entrepreneurship, and he compares it to art. What I take from that is the most important part of that is that unteachable qualities. And really that comes down to creativity. Creativity is valued more and more in today's society as a catch-all term for thinking outside the box or daring to be different in the workplace. Entrepreneurs need to be creative problem solvers. They need to be quick thinkers. And keeping education too boxed up within the traditional business models is going to stifle that creativity. And remember, teaching entrepreneurship is itself an art form. You have to think like an entrepreneur to be able to teach entrepreneurship. Universities and conservatories can use these methods they already employ with applied instruction and practical applications, learning by doing, and easily transition from the business model to a music entrepreneurship model. So really, it's a way of thinking, and we're going to get back to that in a moment. But what skills are we trying to teach? What do our students need to know when they come out into the workplace? We've touched on a lot of them: time management, organizational skills. Anything else you guys want to throw in the pot before we move on?
This is what should or what do we know?
What should we know? What are the skills that we should attain during education that we should have on the way out?
As musicians?
As music entrepreneurs. Yeah. Good questions. They're probably simpler than you think. So it's a way of thinking. It's a mindset. We've got to get kind of out of the practice room and start thinking about the big world outside of that 4x4 box. So entrepreneurship is a mindset. It's an attitude more than anything else. You can't simply model a business course or really get a business minor. That can get you a long way, but you're going to have to do a lot of legwork on your own to translate that into what it's going to look like on your end of the bargain when you're moving into your career. We're talking about music entrepreneurship. So music majors aren't trained to think the same way as business majors are. The first of these differences is risk. So business majors are a lot more cautious than music majors, in my opinion. They're going to think a lot about what they're doing before they launch a project or an idea, and musicians are inherent risk takers just because of the nature of our field. We got into this knowing that our passion was what was going to carry us through the education, and we were just going to cross our fingers for a lot of us and hope that it was going to work out. Intent is another difference. Musicians are trained to serve the art first in a lot of ways, their craft and the music first, and although they're going to need to be successful in the current market, they need to take that in consideration. They need to take the market values into consideration before anything else. Even though we should be practicing, we should be accomplished performers, if you want an audience at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay attention to what the market wants. So they need to view themselves as commodities, they need to view themselves as artists, and they need to view themselves as entrepreneurs. The third difference is investment. So this is a huge difference. A lot of times, for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the older style of entrepreneur, they're not even going to have taken an entrepreneurship class. Maybe they have a business major, but they get an idea for a business they want to start and they just do it, and they jump in, and they're off and running. When musicians have invested sometimes from the age of 3 or 4 in their craft, working constantly to progress through their training all the way up through the collegiate level, and now they're ready to take a leap. And so there's a huge amount of personal investment for the musicians that can translate into a lot of passion in their work. And then evaluation. Most of the time, you're looking at a business major is going to look at things as being a lot more quantitative, while a music major is going to look at the evaluation as being more about the experience, more qualitative. So entrepreneurship isn't a task, it's a cycle. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about. There are 2 diagrams in your handout as well that I'm going to put up on the screen. There are a couple ways to recognize these opportunities and these ventures and ideas that you can go for. And one is just to search out the opportunity on your own. You can put in the sweat equity and create the opportunity, or the opportunity can just present itself out of the blue, which honestly is most of the time what happens. When these opportunities do present themselves and the vision is formed, we really need to take a second and kind of have some introspective analysis. And I'm talking about the first one right there, so the prevision, like how is that opportunity coming to fruition in that first section there? And then in the vision, the eureka moment, that's when the vision is finally realized. We're going to move forward in development. We're going to evaluate the feasibility. This is the business model at the top. We're going to evaluate the feasibility of that. We're going to elaborate on it. We're going to modify it and change it. And then we may go back and do that several different times before we ever launch that endeavor, or it may never get off the ground for a lot of business endeavors. We can translate this into something called I'm Art, which is a model for artists that are doing the same thing. So you're going to start off with that same introspective analysis, finding that opportunity. What is it? Where's the niche you want to fill? What's your idea that you want to move forward with? And then the second, we're going to take that idea that's been developed from an introspective analysis, and we're going to look at the market. We're going to take a look at how the market is shaping and when we want to launch this endeavor, or are we in the appropriate city for this to happen? Maybe not. Asset analysis. This is the important step of analyzing whether or not this is financially feasible. Is it something that you can do? Is there a tangible outcome at the end? Are you going to be able to sustain yourself if this is a big enough project for you to sustain yourself, or is this going to be a side project? And there can be different levels of those. Then response formulation. Not formulation. This can take the form of anything from just an intuitive response, your gut feeling, to a detailed business model and feasibility plan. You can get some help on this and really kind of explore in depth if this is really something that is worth going forward with. And then finally, take off. You can launch it. And this model can be done over and over again for all kinds of small projects, or even some larger projects that you really wanted to launch and maybe start a 501c3, or just put on a community concert. This is a great way to start it and really make sure that you're covering all of your bases. So the other skills that you're going to need are people skills. Sometimes we overlook a lot of what being an artist is, and we get lost in the art. We're stuck in the practice room, art for art's sake, art for academia. We've talked about that. And yeah, we're performers first. We need to master our craft, but at the end of the day, we need to present this to an audience. So how are we going to get that audience? How are we going to get donors? How are we going to make sure that we're communicating with the people that are going to come and see our art? Negotiation is a huge aspect, whether it's you're talking about contracts, you're talking about just negotiating a space, trying to get some in-kind donations, trying to wiggle your way into getting a nicer piano for the space. Basic marketing communication skills. You need to know how to use your social media. You need to know how to communicate with people that have said that they have interest in your career. 9 times out of 10, if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I want to keep track of what you're doing, send me an email and let me know what you're doing. Write their name down or get their card and email them. A lot of us just let that go, and I'm guilty of it too, and we're like, okay, cool. They mean it most of the time. And if they don't, they're just not going to respond, and you didn't lose anything but an email, all right? But if they really want to be invested, they could turn into a donor for a project. They could turn into someone that if you have a project or a contract near them, they could house you later on. There's a lot of opportunities, just making sure that you're maintaining communication with those that care about your career. Audience development, resource development, just comes down to customer service. If you've worked retail, if you've worked waiting, if you've worked wait staff, putting on a smile when you're having a bad day and just being able to sell yourself with the elevator pitch, or just being able to talk about what you're doing in your career right now can go a long way to getting some money and getting some butts in the seats for when it's time to show your art off to an audience. You need to maintain personal professional relationships. I talked about this with the communication. Make sure that you're keeping your little Rolodex of people that have been important to you in your career. Your cooperation, collaboration, and connection. This is huge. There is this romantic notion, and Brayton kind of alluded to this a second ago, that entrepreneurs are these people that just launch these endeavors on their own. They go out in the world and they trailblaze, and they're all by themselves, and they're going to have this tremendous success, when really there are like 50 people behind them making this happen. They may be the figurehead, but if you don't have the ability to collaborate with organizations in your community, if you don't have the connections within your own personal network to be able to draw on some very early capital and be able to start moving the resources in the direction of your endeavor, you're going to have a hard time getting off the ground if you're trying to just drive the ship by yourself. So having people on board with you and collaborating with other arts organizations in the city, a lot of cities will have some kind of board. Here in Bloomington, we have the Bloomington Entertainment and Arts District and the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association that both have grant programs. Knowing about those resources and making yourself visible and communicating with them is going to go a huge, long way to making sure that you're going to make your life easier later on. So what can we do in universities? What programs, courses, initiatives, and institutions can institutions put in place to better prepare themselves and their students for an entrepreneurial career in music? Well, there's one approach that's the top-down. This is the one that we're all probably going to think of first. This is the administratives need to think like entrepreneurs. We've talked about this 3 times at least now. You've got to make sure that you are approaching this whole thing as an entrepreneur when you're teaching entrepreneurs. Your new faculty hires bring in some people that have some experience that's maybe not traditional. Make sure, maybe you don't want to list that it's just a terminal degree available. Maybe commensurate experience is really what you're really looking for this experience, for this position, because they're going to have the experience to take this to the next level. And then you really need to pay attention to what's going on in the community around you and the community at large in the nation as what's going on in the arts culture. That's easy. That's really simple. We'll talk about this. This could be as simple as posting a bulletin board of current trends or sending an email bulletin about current articles that are in the arts about what's going on in the community. Not just for performance majors. This is big. We're talking about composition majors. If they want to mount a show of their new works, a lot of times they're going to have to do that on their own. And there may be organizations and grants available for them, but they're going to need to have the skills to be able to interact with those organizations and get those grants to be able to launch their projects. Theory and musicology are kind of in the same ballpark in the sense that their careers are so academic. If they can't find that first job in academia, what skills are they going to have to be able to kind of navigate the freelance market, lecture circuits, things like that, to get themselves enough experience to eventually be able to land that appropriate job? And then education. This is one that gets overlooked a lot because education traditionally has really, really strong job placement, higher than any of the other fields combined for sure. But you're also working in one of the most volatile markets with a high attrition rate within the first 2 years of teaching, so they're leaving teaching a lot after the first 2 years. So the entrepreneurial skills that you're teaching can give them an advantage when they're trying to make that next career move. Maybe this isn't what they really wanted to do. Maybe they want to go back to school. Maybe they really see themselves in administration, or they need to switch jobs. How are they going to market themselves as individuals? A lot of times schools have a tendency to just market to education majors that, yeah, we have 100% job placement. Well, what happens when you get in that job and you don't want to be doing that job anymore? You're not happy. That can happen to anybody in any career. And then what skills do you have to be able to make a move and get yourself into a position that satisfies you? So here's a few ideas for schools with any budget that you can implement. Angela Beeching is a huge resource for this. She was at Eastman, she was at IU for a little while, now she's at MSM. She has a mini term, a little J term, like 6 to 8 weeks. And they've instituted this at Oberlin, Wisconsin, and Hampshire College so far. And it's a term where you can have like little seminars or little courses or like a series of lectures, and it's not graded necessarily. It's kind of a co-curricular thing that students can enroll in, or you could make it for credit if you'd like, but it's a shorter term. Annual or semi-annual conferences, bringing eminent professionals into your school atmosphere to create a community and a collaborative community for the exchanging of ideas and ability to ask questions and network. Degree portfolios. This is a big one that is pretty easily to make intracurricular, so that you can have things like you need to have a CV by year 2, you need to have like a CV and a resume, and then by year 3 you need to make sure that your website's done, and so that they're checking in on you. And this is part of your degree requirement, is that you have this professional portfolio done by the time that you graduate, and that could take many, many different forms depending on each degree. And your degree recitals, why not throw in a presentational component? Why not have one recital be a performance recital and one be a lecture recital? They need to get used to speaking in front of people and being able to talk intelligently about their craft, because they're going to have to do that to donors. They're going to have to be able to do that in writing to the grant centers across the nation, and that can be implemented in your program notes as well. And then innovation competitions, giving a little incentive. It can be financial, it could be training incentivized if you work with local like business incubators or things like that. We do a couple of those here at IU. And then the ability to kind of compete for a larger community engagement project, so the ability to have students pitch ideas for a huge project in community, and then letting that project be student-led. And that helps the school get into the community, it's going to help raise money, and it's also going to help those students gain a lot of real-world experience. A couple more ideas here. So a lecture series and workshop, panel discussions, and luncheons. You can bring alumni back and have them talk. We have well-advised lunch series here at IU where they'll bring in a professional in the field. You sign up, you go eat with them, and they just talk for about 15 minutes, and then you get to just ask questions and interact with them in a one-on-one basis, which is really nice. That goes along with the network opportunities too. Stimulating faculty conversation. Faculty have ideas. They're also important resources that are already in the university. There are probably 90% of the faculty have things that they want to do, but they don't feel like they either have the ability or the resources to do them or the freedom to do them. So getting out of the faculty's way or asking them what they're interested in, what projects they'd be interested in starting or what students they want to collaborate with. You see this a lot in the research fields and the sciences with grad students helping with primary research on a lot of different things, but it doesn't translate the same, a little bit in pedagogy and voice science, but not quite the same in performance and other aspects. Communicate what is happening in the real world. Newsletters, bulletin boards. If you are operating in a closed environment, you really can't innovate. You have to open the doors. And open yourself up to outside resources, the local career development centers in the universities, the small business incubators, the business school on campus if you have a business department. And then ask questions. Bug your administrators. Get in their ear, set up appointments with the dean and say, I want to do this, I want to do this. Do you remember I want to do this? I really want to do this project. Can I use the hall? And just bug them and bug them and bug them until you're the squeaky wheel. Because a lot of times that's and I'm experiencing that at IU right now, and it's 2 or 3 years in the making, and I'm still just like pushing myself against the administration here and there to get things to happen. But eventually the sands shift and you get a little headway, and that clears the way for people behind you too. So the real goal, this is hard, this is not something that schools want to talk about, but curricular change is really what needs to be happening. It doesn't need to be, and in my opinion, should not be a complete overhaul. DePaul University is trying this right now, and they've completely redone their curriculum, so it's every aspect of the curriculum has an entrepreneurial aspect to it. It's too early to tell whether this is going to succeed. There's a lot of naysayers and there's a lot of supporters. It's really split 50-50 as to whether they think this is going to work, and it's risky to completely overhaul everything. So that's for the few and the brave. There are 120 credits right now in a National Association of Schools of Music undergraduate degree. How are you going to fit more courses into that degree? You're not going to. So what you need to do is you could add courses by changing the degree requirements. You can maybe condense a theory course. At this day and age, they've already packed everything so tight that really what you need to be talking about is intracurricular change. So you can have a pedagogy class where students are required to have a website by the end of the course. You can have some kind of entrepreneurial aspect to every course that the student takes so that a little bit gets finished every time. And that has a lot to do with that degree portfolio that Angela Beeching was talking about. So a little bit, you're chipping away at those skills in the classes that are already in place. And it's just one assignment, one project in every class that is this overarching theme for the school. And I think DePaul has the intentions of doing that. I think they've gone farther than that, and that's something that we'll have to see if maybe going farther is the correct way to go. Co-curricular, offering things that aren't for your degree, but you can sign up for workshops. You can do things that are required by your course, but I said that wrong, I'm sorry. Co-curricular would be things that you are actually getting that are going towards your degree. They're counting towards your coursework, but they're not in the class. So you may be having to attend recitals or those lecture recitals that I was talking about, having to do those presentations, things like that. What I was trying to say was that extracurricular are the things that are outside of that degree program. So these are student-led projects, workshops, seminars, things that either the campus provides or the students provide for themselves. And I think that the extracurricular activities are the easiest to implement if the administration is ready to get out of the way. And they're the easiest things for students to latch onto and take ownership of. The other things you can do is create minors and certificate programs. So you can, for those students that are entrepreneurially inclined, they're already going to be people that are going to be having minors and they're going to be jumping into extra things. So offering certificate programs in entrepreneurship and music business and minors in the same fields, not necessarily through the business schools, but integrating them into the music school's curriculum and bringing in professors to do that is going to go a long way as well. So every school is different. You shouldn't do all of these. Each school is going to have to take a lot of time and really evaluate what's going to be best for them. So the most effective method, in my opinion, you may have already guessed it, but what do you think is the most effective method for entrepreneurship training in schools right now? I'm an example of it.
Hands-on practice.
Hands-on practice. Learning by doing. Is that what I put? Yeah, learning by doing. So getting yourself into a project and letting the students take complete control, autonomy, and all of the risk inherent in the project is going to go a long way. So do what you already know. Performers are learning their craft by doing. Applied instructors can translate this directly into entrepreneurial training. We're already in one-on-one lessons. That's a mentorship. Masterclasses and workshops, we already do that in the performance field. We just need to change our thinking a little bit. Career advisement as well as academic advisement. And then putting programming and capacity building in the hands of students. Now you're going to need some oversight. You're going to have some mentors and some faculty advisors to make sure that they're not going crazy. But there needs to be a lot of autonomy in that. They need permission and the tools to create projects that are important to them, okay? There's a great example of this in Beloit, Wisconsin, the Center of Entrepreneurship and Liberal Education at Beloit. It's a small business and project incubator at Beloit, run through their business department. Students conceive, plan, and implement their ideas while under the observation of staff. Art and business of art, is the kind of, it's under the umbrella of Celeb. And so ABBA, a few students a year get to operate their own art gallery, okay? So the students are responsible for the failure and success. They design the show, they market, they get the resource development, and they hope that people come in the doors and that they cover their expenses. Along with that, Celeb has seen many independent projects, like they had somebody that's had a really successful like online jewelry business, and some app developers that have come out of that program, and some different things that have been really successful. Now, what could this look like in music? I have an example for you from my own life. I'm the executive director for New Voices Opera here at IU. This is a student-run opera company here at Jacobs. It's structured like a nonprofit. There's 8 people on the board, from a marketing team, development team, artistic, and then the executive team. And we're in control of absolutely everything. We put on a double bill of 2 one-act chamber operas in the spring, and another huge concert in the fall, with several other concerts peppered throughout the year to help with marketing and community outreach. We apply for grants, national, regional, and local. We're involved in a little bit of, not local government, but local organizational outreach with Downtown Bloomington Incorporated. And we are operating a live business model. If we fail, we lose money, and then we're responsible for figuring that out. And so there's a lot of pressure put on the students, and there's oversight from the university. We are protected a lot financially with our student account. We have a student organizational account, so there's a lot of kind of red tape that the university's put in there to make sure that we're operating without as much risk as we would be in the real world. So a lot of the risk is taken out, but we're allowed to stretch our legs and kind of figure out how this really works. And autonomy and ownership, as I said, are the absolute keys to this. No matter what you do, you have to make sure that you're tracking the success of your programs in the schools. Institutions have a responsibility to make sure that they're tracking alumni and making sure that they're seeing those alumni be successful, and if they're not, adjusting the curriculum. Implementing something and leaving it behind and not paying attention to really what money is coming back to the university or what programs are working and what aren't is a recipe for a lot of wasted money and time and resources. So that's the last thing I want to say about that, is that you need to make sure that our universities are paying attention to analyzing the data at the end of the day. Some institutions that are worth looking at, I think this is in your handout too. New England Conservatory, Manhattan, a couple big ones, Eastman, take a look at Eastman for sure. Project Jumpstart here at IU, which was started by Angela Beeching. And then the other couple at the bottom are interesting. The New World Symphony and Fifth House Ensemble, which was just at IU, are ensembles that are doing really, really great work and training entrepreneurs and doing workshops while they're performing. They're on tour, and then they'll come in the university and like do a workshop on being a great music entrepreneur and doing your taxes and how do you manage a startup. So there's opportunities not just within academia, but also in the ensemble performing world. Some print resources for you. I've highlighted a few keys. Angela Miles Beeching, Beyond Talent, David Cutler, The Savvy Musician, made to stick, why some ideas survive and some others die. And then a guide to getting arts grants are some good ones to look at. These are all great. Those are just some ones that I've used. And then in your handout, you have some databases for job open. I don't have time to open them all up, but Bridge, you have to, I think that's a paid service through New England Conservatory unless your university has a membership. Yap Tracker, we all probably know about that. Musical America, that's a little bit different. It's more in the pop, music theater, kind of recording arts world, but if you're looking for jobs in that realm or some side jobs, there's a lot of good information there. Of course, our very own nats.org. If you scroll to the bottom and to the right, there's the job resources page on that, and there's only like 4 jobs listed right now, but it gives all the information you need to know about university, and I think there's even occasionally some high school and other private training opportunities on there. Our own Project Jumpstart has a lot of resources. Did I skip one? Yeah, the New England Conservatory Resource Center. This is awesome. If you ever need to know anything about anything, go to New England Conservatory. This is one worth clicking on. Go to the New England Conservatory, and they have, and a lot of what the Project Jumpstart is on the next page is a lot of the same stuff. And this is just not going to work. There we go. They've got oodles upon oodles of information for you, from advice on music careers to competition, entrepreneurship, festivals, finances. Fractured Atlas is a fantastic resource. If you've not used mint.com for your own resources, your own personal finance management, it might be something to look at. Online piggy bank, Smarty Pig. There's all kinds of information on here that's just invaluable for someone who's in their own startup. Project Jumpstart, you can look through all those. Those are a lot of the same things, and those also include a lot of print resources that are handy dandy. And I just want to leave you with this. What is honored in a society will emerge in that society. And that was Plato. It's really important. I believe in this really strongly. This is something that if we value entrepreneurship and giving ownership of students' careers to the students, we're going to see that emerge as something that's valued wholesale. But it starts with individuals taking the effort and putting in the time to make this a reality. And then eventually society as a whole will see that this is something that they really need to be looking at. So I think that's all I have. Thank you very much. You guys have any questions for me at all? I threw like a bunch of information at you. I know. Anything at all? Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.